Hello and thank you for watching. I'm Jennifer with Olympia Piano. We are working on the study guide for Clair de Lune. This is video number 3 of the study guide series. It's my intent to have a resource for you. If you're learning this piece and you have a question about a specific aspect, you can refer to this series. Within the video, there will also be timestamps so you can skip around to see exactly where you might want to work that day. Today's video is called Notes and Ties. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the piece starting in measure 1 all the way through the end and just clarify places that tend to be tricky in my many years of experience teaching this piece. So let's go ahead and get started with measure 1. Here's the first thing. We're talking about notes. Which notes should we play? We are in the key of D flat major. So that means the notes we're going to be using are D flat, E flat, regular F, G flat, A flat, B flat, regular C, and D flat. So all 5 black keys for this piece. So as we go through, I'm just going to note things in either red, black, or a yellow highlighter. So we'll start with the highlighter here. One thing I really want you to pay attention to is the ties. Some of the ties are just creating longer beats like this. I explained in video number 1 how we need to tie these two together because of the compound meter. But many of the other ties also serve a harmonic function. So for example, this tie here and many throughout, you want to make sure that you actually hold it through the next beat 1 so we get that harmony. If I didn't observe the tie, this is what it would sound like. But if I do observe the tie, I get this harmony with the pedal. That beautiful, blurry, colorful effect. So make sure that you're doing that with all the ties. You do the tie here with the rhythm we talked about in the rhythm video. This is one that people tend to miss, the ties in this measure, and I don't know if it's just because they're in the middle of the staff, but make sure in measure 7 here that with both hands, thumb, you keep down and don't repeat it on the 3rd beat. So it is not, okay? One other little thing is when you see notes like this, because it's the interval of a second, it's played at the same time. It's not going to be moving ahead. Now we have some really important ties coming up. And this first one here, important and fun to play. And there's kind of a lot going on in that one. You've got to do a finger switch. That's what that 5-1 is. So you're going to go 3 and then hold the thumb, change the pedal. Okay, it's not going to be only the D flat should sound at measure 9. The next thing we're going to talk about is how this looks right here in measure 9. This group of 3 notes, the first beat here, 1 and a, is split between the right and the left hand. And Debussy's writing it this way because he wants you to go left, right, left. So a couple things to note here. We have these things called ledger lines, which are these extra lines above or below the staff. So we have our staff here. This bottom line in this case is E flat. And if we had one line, it would be C, down a third, A flat, and then down another third. So those notes are A flat and F. You probably are wondering, why didn't he just write it down here? I think it's because he wants you to go left, right, left. And then speaking of that, notice it goes into the treble clef with the left hand and then back down to bass clef with the left hand. So let me play all of that. Switch, D flat only, right, left, right. So these are all the same note. We're going to just go over some more ledger lines, which are those extra lines here. Left hand goes into ledger line territory with a D flat sitting on top of the C line and then a third higher than that. So D flat and F. And then I think everything else is very straightforward. Here, this note here, C flat. It is a white key. Technically, Debussy doesn't need to write it again, and it won't be written again in all editions, but this next beat here is going to be C flat, D flat, F. Okay? And then a final ledger line here with E flat in the top note of the left hand. Hold that bottom tie as you change the top note only. All right, moving ahead to measure 15. The key point on much of this is the ledger lines. One thing I just want to point out is whatever the bottom note is the same as the top. So it's an octave with another note in between. And you just want to pay attention to how long that in-between note lasts. Like, for example, that in-between note, which is B flat, is lasting through all of these chords, every single one of them, and then you end with a B flat on top. Checking the ledger lines here. First ledger line is A, C, E, so sitting on top of E is F, moving down 1, E flat, moving down 1, D flat, moving down 1, C. Remember, these are played at the same time. They're just the interval of a second. And then D flat and B flat. This time in this measure, it starts the same, but then goes up to G flat. Again, the bottom notes are the same. It's just an octave on the outside. Couple things that we see here is MD. This means main droite, and that is French for the right hand. So your right hand is going to come down in that measure and play that top B flat and then jump and okay. Second line here, this is a grace note, and that grace note, it's kind of hard to see all the lines. It's on the third line. So we've got A, C, E, and it's E flat because E flat's in our key signature. So E flat for that grace note. Again, some important ties. Hold that one so we get that harmony when the pedal changes on beat 1. Okay, double checking the ledger lines. We're still within these octave patterns here. So this ledger line A, C, so that's D flat for that one. And then this next one here, right here, 3 ledger lines. So A, C, E, E flat, same note as the bottom. One thing to note is if you've never seen this before, this means play all the notes underneath it up an octave. So it's written here, but really we're going to play here. And then notice where those dots end. So 3 are up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, then back to the normal octave. And there's a couple things in the left hand here I want you to see. First thing is right here, we've been in the bass clef with a bunch of ledger lines, by the way. So top note of these is G flat. Then moving up to A flat, and then back to G flat on top. This chord right here is simply an inversion of this. So we're going to take this same D flat and G and just rewrite it in treble clef and put this B flat on the top. See how that works? And then here, the notes are F flat, feels like E, but it's F flat, then A flat, which you can see, B flat, D flat, and then another F flat on top. One thing to note is the order in which you play the notes is as they are stacked. It's not going to be B flat first and everything else. Bottom to top. So it'll sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and there's a lot of artistic liberty in that moment, so that can be quite flexible. All right, we're taking a break from ties for these 2 measures. So the main thing is just making sure the notes on these big third beats are correct. This C flat on the top, then we've got F flat down here, and then another C flat, another F flat. And I'm just going to mention this now because we're going to encounter it later. So the chord on beat 3, A flat, C flat, F flat, A flat, C flat, F flat, and D flat. It feels like an E major chord. And later it's going to actually be written as an E major chord. So we're going from D flat, F minor, F flat, D flat. just so you know, this natural here, it's what we call a cautionary accidental. Technically, when you have the measure line, that cancels out all of these F flats and makes it F natural again, but it's just like a gentle reminder. Okay, moving on. All right, pretty straightforward here. We've got some ledger lines here in the bass clef right here. It's actually a D flat chord, so we're gonna have D flat for that first one, F, and then A flat, and back down. So the top of that arpeggio are those notes. G natural in the next measure, canceling out the G flat. So that's going to move up a half step. And that is important because we've got a bunch of G naturals, and specifically this one on the ledger lines that I want to draw your attention to. So these ledger lines, we've got E flat and then G natural, lasting for the whole measure. Second line here, everything is very straightforward. One thing I want to mention is when you see these groupings of the sixes, left hand is going to play those four notes, right hand plays two. Left hand plays four, right hand plays two. That's why they're written like that instead of chopped into two groups. So he's showing us that he wants these to flow even if we're using two hands to do it. Some important and interesting stuff is happening now. Here, measure 33. Take a look at this. Right here, we have a left hand with a ledger line in the bass clef. That is G flat. And that happens to be the exact same G flat that is. You'll be using two different hands to play those basically right after each other. That's going to sound like this. One and left, right. So they just have to kind of take turns right there. And then don't miss this treble clef right here for the left hand, going to that D natural, little bit of ledger line down here at the end of the line. So we've got a C and then an A flat on the bottom, bunch of D and E naturals in this measure. Moving ahead, we have that same thing with the C flat and the F flat, a little bit of a different pattern. You see the C flat here, ledger lines, F flat, 3 ledger lines is A flat, and then the similar in the top, A flat and C flat, no ledger lines here. But remember how I was saying earlier how that felt like an E chord? Here, Debussy writes it as an E chord because what's coming up is a key change. We are changing to the key of C sharp minor. C sharp is what we call an enharmonic key. So this key here on the piano can be written two different ways, either as D flat or C sharp. And we're switching to the key of C sharp minor, which is the key that has 4 sharps, or depending on which version of the scale. So this will not be a black key for this section unless it has a sharp on it. As you are playing this and this, know that even though they look a lot different, they sound and feel almost exactly the same. The first part's exactly the same. That's the same. And then instead of this, it just goes E major. Okay, so we have the new key signature here. Notice left hand is in treble clef, and then we've got some seconds in this line. So remember, it's not going to be played, it's going to be played at the same time. And if you can, you want to be holding that finger 5 as you play these, if your hand can. Okay, so here, just make sure we get these notes correct. The sharp is on the line, so that means it's E sharp, and then the F is already sharped from our key signature, so it's going to be a half step, kind of an intense color there, E sharp. Okay, right hand, tricky ledger lines here. So we're starting with C sharp, just 2 ledger lines. The first is A, C sharp, then moving up to the next ledger line, E, the C sharp right there, and then another ledger line higher. So A, C, E, G sharp, same one, G sharp, down a step to F sharp, and this F sharp, if you can hold it all the way, that would be great. So holding all the way through. Okay, now we have a crazy set of ledger lines here. We have the F sharp that we just had. sitting on top of the third ledger line. So we're way up here. Then we're going to sit on top of the next ledger line. So F sharp sitting on top of the third, third higher than that is A. And then check this one out. 2, 3, 4, 5. We are up to C sharp. So this is actually an octave right here. Okay. Left hand has that second here. This is a cautionary natural because it would have canceled at the measure line. So we've moved from this to this. Again, it's not this, it's same time. Then we've got some more ledger lines for the left hand, C sharp down to A. Then one underneath that would be G sharp, the space under that ledger line. See how some of these right hand and left hand 16ths are split up 3 and 3, and then we've got 4 and 3 here. Moving ahead, we've got the tie here as we did earlier, one here. This tie is actually going to be with the pedal because you can't play all of these notes and then hold this bottom note. Okay, notice here goes back down into the bass clef for the left hand. And then very important, we go back to our starting key of D flat. So there's just a short amount of notes in that C sharp minor section. Back to D flat major. Okay, taking a look at a couple things here. Ledger line under the treble staff this time. First ledger line is C, second is A or A flat. So sitting underneath A flat is G flat. Then moving up, A flat, and then you should know that one. Left hand just going along here. Right hand, you're going to want to make sure that you hold that dotted half note, hold that dotted quarter note when you switch. Take a look at this tie here. You're only tying the top 2 notes, but you're going to actually play the single note here. And then here, this whole pattern only consists of A flat and E flat. Instead of thinking of it in a group of 6, A flat, E flat, A flat, E flat, A flat, E flat, I want you to think about it in overlapping groups of 3 notes. It's really fun to play, but you see how the top 2 notes of this pattern become the bottom 2 notes of the next pattern, and so forth. So you're literally just going like this. I was doing that again. Okay, it creates a really wonderful pattern, so you just have to kind of keep track where you're at. But right here with the right hand, your hands are kind of squished in the same area of the keyboard. So put your right hand on top when you play this. I'm going to play that tie at the end of the measure so you can hear what I'm talking about. So I'll start beat 3, measure 44. I'm going to hold these. See, my right hand's going to go on top. Thumbs next door to each other. Okay, here we just have some leisure lines in the left hand. So they're right here. They're going to create this chord here, C. First ledger line, E flat, G flat, B flat. C, E flat, G flat, B flat. And it does the same thing here. So hopefully you can just see that it was probably easier for Debussy to just keep it in bass clef and have a bunch of ledger lines here so that you weren't constantly having to think about treble and bass. But that said, guess what? We're going to move to treble, and that's like a reminder clef, letting you know what's coming up, especially right here because it's a peach turn. All right, we've got some interesting things going on with ties here. The first thing is it's a ledger line note, so A, C, E, E flat is lasting for a while. So we've got the normal dotted half tied to dotted chord, getting that 3 beats, but then he adds another beat to that. So that's going to stay on E flat until beat 2 here, where we go down a step. Again, ledger line, D flat, and then back up to E flat. So make sure to hold that. And physically, if your hand is large enough, hold it down while you're playing all this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and all right. Now left hand also has some tie stuff going on, but the thing is notice we have a tie here on G flat, but then we'll also have some more G flats in this other voice of 6/16 notes. And it happens here again as well on this second beat here. So you are just going to play this first one a little bit louder and then just barely touch those so we get the idea of the pattern, but we know that this is kind of the main voice. 1 and 2 and 3 and not 1 and 2 and of course I'm exaggerating right there, but just barely touch it. Next measure, we have an A natural on both of these middles of these three groups. So, and then up here also A natural, and then another one of those C flats right here. Line 2 here, see this 8 VA. So instead of playing here like we did at the beginning, it's going to be way up here. Left hand still in the treble clef. So the left hand actually has some treble ledger lines here above the staff. F, A flat, F, A flat, C. These are notes that are usually up here with the right hand. And then just watch that A natural and make sure to do this tie just as we did at the beginning. So that's this. Hold the tie. Okay, still 8 VA, and then it ends on measure 54. We've got ledger line here. That one is an E flat, tie. This is an interesting tie. We're going to tie that bottom note, then play the tops, and then tie that last one. Then we have also that C, E flat, G flat, B flat, as we had before in the left hand. But let's take a look at this right here, this rolled chord. The order is going to be from the bottom. So C, E flat, F, A flat, C, not C, E, A flat, C, F. Play them from bottom to top. And you are going to start playing this as soon as you play this note in the right hand, and then the top of this chord is going to go with this, more or less. This is impressionistic music, so you can interpret it pretty freely, but that's kind of a general rule for that kind of stuff. So we're going to go like starting on beat 2, 2, and start. Okay, and that's where you have that tie, holding these two notes so we get that harmony. Holding the F tie here at the end. Pretty straightforward here. We're starting with a ledger line in the left hand, A flat, one of those rolled chords once again. So that also involves ledger lines. Bottom note is G flat, then B flat, then D flat and E flat. Again, don't play, but play in order, starting right after that F. Okay. Left hand switches back to the bass clef. We've got some ledger lines here. Sitting on top of the C ledger line is D flat, then up a third, F, and A flat. By the way, here at the end, this duple should have a 2 under it, so it should be that same rhythm as we had before. 3 and all right, last page. We have that similar crossover thing that we had on the very first page, and here is a really, really, really important note right here. This bottom note, C flat. And what that does is it creates what's called a dominant chord on D flat, which is kind of unusual because D flat is what do we call our 1 chord. And so this chord is very special in this key because it leads to this. And that's what he does in the next measure. So just make sure that you are 100% positive about this. Okay? I played it pretty loud that time. We have that note again here, but in this edition, it looks as if the flat is on the D, which it is totally lined up with the D, but that flat actually goes with the C. And so we have this holding that C flat in a tie and then replaying the D flat on top. In more current scholarly editions, the flat will be in the correct spot. Okay, pay attention to this tie here. We've got these inner ties, just hold those down as you're playing the melody. Take a look at measure 65. Rhythmically, depending on which edition you have, this may or may not be correct. This is a duple, so there should be a 2 there somewhere. In the more modern editions, there is. Okay, we talked about this rhythm in the study guide number 2, so remember that it's 1, and a. But look at this. This is so fun to play, but can be kind of confusing at first. You're going to cross your left hand over the right hand. So the left hand note is actually up here above the right hand. And then it moves back down to underneath. So it goes like this. 1, and 2, and 3, and Okay, last part. Very straightforward. You see the groups of 4 with the left hand, 2 with the right hand. Some familiar ledger lines, all these A flats, D flats. Let's just go through the notes on beats 2 and 3 here. Remember to hold this, by the way. So we've got a C flat on top. The right hand will have these 2 notes. Then the left hand, F flat, A flat, C flat, F flat again, sitting on the ledger line, the third ledger line, G flat, and then one up from that, A flat. So to recap, those are these notes. A flat, the bottom one. F flat feels like E. A flat in the key signature. C flat, F flat, G flat, A flat. And then playing it, your hands are going to squish a little bit. On this one, I prefer to keep my right hand on the bottom, let the left hand kind of climb in on top. See how that works? Some more familiar ledger lines here. We have the D flat and then F natural. It's only natural because the previous measure had a flat and this editor is using those cautionary ledger lines. Same thing with the C there. And then we have the same kind of thing, but up an octave for this whole section here. Notice left hand comes in to treble clef here. Notes are A flat, C flat, F flat, A flat written in the key signature, C flat, and F flat with a C flat up here. So whereas we had this the first time, second time we have it here. But this time there's no clashing though. And we are finally to the last line. More ledger lines to finish this out. We have in the right hand, we have first a C flat, then moving up a step to D flat, then up a third to F flat, and then the F becomes natural, so F, and then the one sitting on top of that, A flat. And notice the D flat, F, and A flat are the top of this rolled chord. The left hand has the same arpeggio as it had in the previous measure. Bass clef, and then so this last bit will be starting in bass, then treble. So the ledger line here is the same D flat that we're using over here. That's that D flat. And lots of flexibility and freedom with how you play this last part. So let me just play the last 2 measures. So we're up here, way up with these ledger lines. Treble clef. And then left hand's going to come down, and you can have a lot of flexibility and freedom in how you do this. So that's it for study guide number 3. I hope that I was able to cover most of any notes or ties that are tricky. If you're studying this piece and you notice something that I missed, please let me know. Leave it in the comments so the viewers can see it, so we have a complete assessment of this piece. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the other Clair de Lune study guides. You can also mention my channel on your social media, share it with anyone who might like this particular detailed style of piano teaching. If you found this really helped you out, you can also send a donation to the channel through PayPal or through YouTube Super Thanks, which is a little option at the bottom of your screen that says thanks. All of those donations allow me to allot more time in my schedule to create content like this. If this is your first time to my channel, one thing I love is if people let me know where they're from in the comments. So please do that, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. As always, thank you for watching.